What's up, everybody? This is Simon here at the Ideal Hour, and today I have a very special guest. He is well known on YouTube, on social media. He is Ben Hedges. He is the credit Shifu, which means master in credit cards, basically. He also does business podcasts and a lot of different things on his YouTube channel. Over 200,000 subscribers, over 43 million views on YouTube. Today, we get to pick his brain on what his favorite credit cards are, his travel, where his destinations that he prefers to go to, how he uses his points, how he manages his YouTube channel, and everything in between. I'm so excited to have him on my podcast. And I will let you guys know another thing. This isn't the first podcast or so we did together. We actually did a Centurion podcast on his channel before, which I loved, and I'm so thankful for Ben to come on. Ben, thanks for coming on the podcast. I know you're a busy man. I just truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's cool, man. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Very well. So let's dive right into it. You are the credit Shifu, which means master in credit. I've watched your videos. You know a lot about credit cards and points. And the first question is, how did you get started in all this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I moved to the US in 2011, and I was here for, a few years. And at that time, I didn't have any credit score or anything. I didn't even know what that was. And I discovered that it was kind of difficult if you wanted to rent an apartment or if you wanted to get a new cell phone. They would always ask for a massive deposit. I think the apartment wanted 6 months rent up front, which I ended up having to give them, which is crazy. And someone told me like, oh, that's because you don't have a US credit score. So I was like, wow, what's that? At that time, I think the UK didn't even have credit scores. Now they do. They followed the US a few years behind. But so at that time, I didn't know anything about it. So anyway, I started researching it and I started getting various credit cards to build my credit score. I think I got the Chase Freedom first. That was my first card. And then I got some Amex cards and Capital One and things. And then I discovered the Points Guy, which is a blog, kind of cool website. And he talks about how you can use your credit card to collect points and then you can travel for free, right? You can take first class, business class, all these cool things, 5-star hotels. And that was really cool for me because at the time I really had no money because I'd given it all for a deposit on an apartment, right? So yeah, I started getting into the points game. We call it the points and miles game. So hotel points, airline miles, credit card points. And yeah, I started to be able to accumulate quite a lot of points just from my spending. And you've also got welcome bonuses where a credit card will give you a certain amount of points if you spend a certain amount of money when you open the card, just as a bonus to entice you to get the card. And sometimes those can be worth a lot. Like if you get 100,000 points, that could get you a round trip business class ticket to Europe, So these can be quite valuable. So yeah, that's really how I got into it. It was a necessity at first because I needed to build my credit score so I didn't keep getting charged outrageous deposits on things. And then after I, figured out, oh, we can actually use this for like, points and miles, luxury benefits and stuff. I got into it further through that.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And before getting into points and miles, what did you do before you opened your YouTube channel? We're going to get a little bit into why you started a YouTube channel on points and miles. But before you even did that, what did you do?
So I came here originally to work at a Chinese American TV station called New Tang Dynasty TV. Okay. And this is a TV station that broadcasts uncensored news to China because that was my degree was in modern and classical Chinese. So as soon as I graduated, I came and worked at this TV station. And this TV station, it was started by members of the Falun Gong, which is a persecuted group in China. The communist government in China has been putting them in labor camps and stuff. It's like a Buddhist meditation group. Okay. And so they started this TV channel to broadcast, uncensored news back to China, basically about like human rights and all sorts of stuff that the Chinese government doesn't want people to hear about. Sure. So I worked there. And it was a great place to work. Like I learned a lot and it was a job. They paid me, but it wasn't big bucks. You're working at a nonprofit, a human rights nonprofit. So, but yeah, it was, that was basically why I came to the US in the first place.
And then it sounds like after doing that, you started following the Points Guy, which was a truly an original in his space. I think he's out of New York. Now there's so many of those sites, Thrifty Traveler and so forth. But the Points Guy, definitely, I've actually had some interactions with him in the past. He's a nice guy. But you loved what he was doing, and then you decided, hey, I'm going to start a YouTube channel talking about all these, because the Points Guy really was not on YouTube. He's all blog based.
So yeah, when I started, there was literally no one doing it on YouTube. I think a guy called Beat the Bush, a guy in San Francisco, he did one video called What's in My Wallet? And I think that was the only credit card video that was out there on YouTube at the time. And so I started doing it, and Ask Sebi started like a couple of weeks later. So he's like my rival. No, I'm just kidding.
Boy.
He's the other big, credit card channel on YouTube. So it was, for a long time, it was just me and him sort of head to head. And now there's loads of channels. There's like 20 or 30 different channels. But yeah, when I started, I was the only guy, and then he joined, and me and him were the only guys doing it for like at least probably a year or so.
Wow. And Ask Sebi, I think you're friends with him too, correct? It's not like you're bitter rivals that are.
No, I'm friends with him. I mean, we actually did some collabs in the early days. We had a little bit of a falling out at one time, but we kind of made up about it. So it's all good. But yeah.
I see. So there is YouTube drama.
There's a little bit of rivalry between us. Yeah. Because like in the early days, we didn't really understand how the industry worked so well. So we kind of like were stealing a little bit of ideas from each other, and we sometimes would overstep the mark a little bit. We kind of fell out for a little bit, but then we made up, and now we're much more experienced in sort of the YouTube etiquette, you know?
It's interesting. I think about YouTube, and I don't have the biggest channel or anything like that. I've been doing it for a few years. We talked about it before, and I can't focus just on credit cards. It's not my thing. But with YouTube, it's like, there is really no competition. It's like collaboration, it seems like, is the way to just gain more followers. If you could hate each other, you're just not gaining each other's viewers, so to speak.
Yeah, you can. I mean, some people also will be subscribed to two different channels on the same thing, and they'll watch videos on both, even on the same topic, because they want different perspectives on something. But yeah, you can, in addition to getting an audience that's already there, you can sort of create an audience on YouTube as well. So like there was no credit card audience when I first started. We created it. So yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Let's get into credit cards. Let's talk a little bit about credit cards. I've done a lot of credit card videos, and those get more views for me than some of the other videos I've done. I guess I got put in that little category of credit card videos. I made other videos like a California Exodus, which had several 100,000 views and so forth. But let's talk about credit cards. Are you an Amex guy, a Chase guy, all around?
Principally, I use Amex and Chase. Those are my two systems that I heavily use. I've got like one Capital One card, but it's a cashback card that I never really use. So yeah, I've never actually got any Citi cards. I've got one Barclays card. That's the Wyndham business card, and that's just because it gets me the Caesars Caesars Palace Diamond status, so I can status match a few others from that as well. So that's really the only reason I have that. But the ones I generally redeem points for, I got like 75,000 Wyndham points actually in my account that I've totally forgotten about. I could probably go on a trip. But the ones that I actually redeem points for generally would be Amex and Chase.
Mm-hmm. And when you go into your wallet, and you mentioned what's in my wallet video, when you go into your wallet, what do you pull out first? Is it an Amex or is it a Chase, or does it depend on where you are?
That really depends on where I am. Yeah. So, let's have a look. I can get it out now. Let's check it out. So right now I've got like a couple of Chase Freedoms. I've got an Amex Platinum and an Amex Business Platinum. I've got an Amex Gold. I've got a Chase Inc. Preferred, and I've got a Chase Inc. Unlimited. Wow. It really depends whether it's a business purchase or a personal purchase, whether I'm going to use a business card or a personal card. And then it depends, like, for the Freedom card, there are rotating quarterly categories. So last quarter, it was gas. So I was using that card for gas the whole time. Otherwise, I use the Wyndham Business Earner card because that's 8 points per dollar on gas. And then Amex Gold is really like my daily driver card because it's dining and supermarkets. Those are probably my two biggest spending categories.
For the Amex Gold?
Yeah. So and that's 4 points per dollar on those two categories on the Amex.
Wasn't it 5 before? 5 points?
It was
Or am I-
five. It was never 5 points, but you might be thinking of cashback. Like if you had the Charles Schwab Platinum and you could redeem for 1.25 cents per point, so you could use the Amex Gold and get 5% cashback. But they lowered that down to 1.1 cents. So if you want cashback, if you want to get Amex Gold points and then use them through the Schwab Platinum, you can get 4.4% cashback.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Is that unlimited?
It's the restaurants is unlimited and the supermarkets is limited to $25,000 a year, which I think is enough for most people.
As someone that has an Amex Platinum, I have a business Platinum as well. And then I've had a business Gold as well. And then the Centurion card as well for personal. I find that sometimes using the Centurion is not as beneficial as some of the other points programs just from the Platinum and even the Gold. It's pretty incredible. You would think that Amex, with the fees that they add, would just allow the Centurion members to collect the best amount of points for that premium.
The Centurion, it's kind of like similar to the difference between the Gold and the Platinum. Like people collect points on the Gold and the Platinum is a benefits card. You don't really buy much with it. You buy air tickets with it because it's 5x on air travel, but otherwise you're just using it for the lounge access, the fine hotels and resorts collection. And I think the Centurion is similar. It's more about the benefits you get with it. And Amex also probably thinks that people who are wealthy enough to have the Centurion don't really care about them.
They're not worrying about it. They're not worrying about which card to use for gas that week.
I don't know. What do you think? Do you worry about do you want the points or do you not care?
So I do collect points a lot. I mean, I probably have about 2 million points or miles right now just sitting there. I haven't used it. Well, I shouldn't say I haven't used it. I've used it a few times traveling recently, but it's been more mainly to Florida. I haven't traveled internationally in the last couple of years with everything that was going on. But I do love the points. And I've had a company that would also help utilize these points for people that are traveling, but wanted to find like the saver deal. For example, Ben has 1 million miles, but he doesn't want to spend 45 minutes or an hour or two searching for the best possible deal from one airport to another, right? So I had a company that would specialize in, instead of you leaving, say, San Francisco airport, we would fly you to Los Angeles, and from Los Angeles, we would fly you to London using your points, which would give you a saver discount potentially, or from one of the other better airports. So I do understand that concept, and I love the point system. I tend to be more heavy on Amex than Chase, although I did have the JP Morgan Reserve card, which really, in my opinion, matched Amex's pizzazz and the concierge that you would get the attention. I did like the heft of the JP Morgan Reserve, or it used to be called the Palladium card, which you know as well.
It's heavy, isn't it? Yeah.
It's heavy. Oh yeah, it was 28 grams. I did a weight test on my channel and I loved it. And the thing with Amex is, I don't know if you know this, but the Centurion card used to be a heavier card. And then some people, for whatever reason, complained about that. So they also came out with a plastic Centurion card. And they had a plastic version of the Centurion card for those people that didn't want their wallet to be heavier. And then they kind of 86'd it or got rid of the plastic version of that card for travel and slimmed down their Centurion card to like about 12 or 13 grams, which I would like to see it a little heavier, to be honest with you.
Because now it's the same construction as the Amex Platinum, basically.
Yeah.
But the old one used to be made of titanium.
Correct.
And we did a test where because there was this story about this Canadian millionaire, and he had his card in his pocket, his Centurion, and he got shot, and and he survived, right? And people were automatically assuming it's because of his metal credit card, right? Because there was a bullet hole in it. I don't think it did anything, but there was maybe it like slightly changed the trajectory of the bullet, so it missed it hard. Anyway, we did a test where we shot up some titanium. A friend of mine from Taiwan who has the Centurion, he had the old titanium version. He canceled it and then gave it to me, right? And we tested it, and
it didn't work too well. That's not a bad idea. I should probably get a couple guns out and destroy my old cards and get 1 million views. But all right, let's stick to continue with the credit. would you say right now for the average viewer of your channel, my channel, et cetera, is a go-to credit card they should get right at, say, this moment? Maybe they're starting out in the credit game like you were once and I was.
Well, for starting out, right now, Capital One has become stronger and stronger. Starting out, actually, no, I wouldn't recommend Capital One for starting out. I would say the Discover It card is a great card to start out with, because Discover, they target people who have lower credit scores, or we call thin files. So not a low score because you trust your credit through bad, habits, missed payments, but a low credit score just because there's no information on you. And the Discover It card, it earns 5% cash back in rotating quarterly categories. And you also get a cashback match. So they double all the cashback you earn in the first year. So it's a great opportunity because most cards that target people at the low level, they don't earn any kind of rewards or anything. So that's a great card to get to start out. As you're working your way up the ladder, you probably want to get some of the Chase cards like Chase Freedom. Typically when you get to around 700 on your credit score, that's a good time to get Amex cards, because Amex are quite easy to get as long as your credit score is 700 or more. They're pretty easy to get. A great card now as well for people who are maybe not total beginners, but they want to get a travel credit card that gives them a lot of benefits, but they don't want to fork out like $700 for an annual fee. A great card is the Capital One Venture X. That's one that we talk about a lot now, because it's a $395 annual fee, but they give you a travel credit for $300. So as long as at least once a year you book a flight through Capital One Travel or a hotel, and it's over $300, and it doesn't have to be in one booking. It could be several bookings, goes over 300. You get $300 returned to you. So that takes you down to $95. And they actually give you 10,000 points every year as well, which is worth at least $100. So basically it's free. And this card gets you into all the airport lounges, not the Amex Centurion Lounge, obviously, but it gets you into Priority Pass, Plaza Premium, and Capital One's own lounges, which they're opening up. They got a couple open already.
It seems like a lot of these credit cards are going into their own lounges nowadays. I feel like they're all opening, and I feel like because of the turbulence, that's funny I use turbulence, but because of the turbulence with these airlines that continuously shift, one day they're a partner with Amex or another brand, and next day they're not. And the members, every time that lose lounge access, are upset about it. Alaska recently, for example, with Amex. But is that the trend you're seeing as well? All these companies are competing with lounges?
Yeah, so Chase, they opened their first lounge in, I think it's Boston, the new Sapphire Lounge. I haven't gone there yet. I could actually potentially go up there because we're in the Northeast. I'd like to see it. But yeah, Chase. So you've got Capital One, Amex, and Chase. Basically, these three are all competing. And also the airline lounges are getting crowded. So what's happening is a lot of the airlines are cutting lounge access on their cards, like Delta did it recently, right? So we don't know about that. You've got to spend, if you've got the Delta Reserve Amex card now, you got to spend $75,000 a year to have unlimited access. Otherwise you get like 10 passes or something. And the Delta Sky Club is really nice. I went there on my trip to Hawaii, so switched planes in LA and went to a couple of hours in the Sky Club. So it's it's definitely a desirable lounge to be able to get into. But it's always like a cat and mouse game, the credit card game, because they're constantly like, a card will come out with a huge sign up bonus. They'll do that for a year, maybe 100,000 points. And then the bank will realize like, okay, we've got to rein it in now. We've got enough people have the card. We need to start making money from it. So they'll drop it down to 50,000. And then another card pops up over here. And so it's always, you lose access to this lounge. Another one pops up over there. So it's constantly
ever changing.
Yeah, it's changing and evolving and stuff. So.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'm glad to see for some stability just for the end users, because the end users are also investing a lot into those credit cards, in my opinion. You're building up this portfolio of points. You're learning how the program works. You're investing time and figuring out the best benefits for it. And it kind of does hurt to see a lounge access be denied or limited, even though you've been committed to that card for so long to build that type of relationship. So I'm glad these companies are also opening up their own lounges to really back their clients. I think it's a very positive, and competition in that space only betters the consumer, in my opinion. I think these lounges are going to get better and better. Let's talk about how crowded some of these lounges are getting, because you travel, I travel. Sometimes, if it wasn't for the Centurion Lounge and the Centurion card, I'd have no seat. They do reserve a seat most of the time. It's kind of done. I wouldn't say it's done in like a very VIP manner, but they'll try to get you a seat if you're a Centurion member, say in the Centurion Lounge, even if the lounge has a big line outside. What are you seeing in terms of traveling? How crowded are these places, and what does that do for your experience?
Well, they're definitely on the crowded side. I mean, the Delta Sky Club I went to recently was probably like 70% full. At Christmas, I went to the UK, British Airways business class. They share their lounge with American Airlines, and that was like really full.
Oh, wow.
And that was a brand new lounge as well, and it's really full. We did get a seat, but it was like, yeah, it was pretty full. So definitely, yeah, we see these lounges are getting fuller and fuller. So I think they just need to invest in opening bigger and bigger lounges. And I like that though. I like the luxury side of this whole credit card hobby, you know. So if you've got a card that, you know, maybe it has a high annual fee, but you get access to some really nice lounge and it's not going to get too full. You're going to be guaranteed a seat and stuff. I think that's worth it if you're someone who regularly travels.
You know, and I think like Priority Pass, they've done this in the past. Now they're doing it at more lounges as well. They allow you to reserve a seat for a small fee. Now, of course, members are expecting to have access, but I would not mind if Amex or other brands have released a way for you to reserve a seat as well if you're going to be traveling. I think that would be something really beneficial, even if you have to pay a little bit of a premium. It's kind of like paying a VIP premium at Disneyland to not have to wait in line for forever. You know what I mean? And I'm all for that. If you could afford it, do it. What's your take on that? Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, in the UK, a lot of their lounges you can pre-book, and it's £5, right? Like $7. So it's like a nominal amount. And you can just pre-book. And I actually fell for it. I didn't do it at one.
Mhm.
I went to this conference in Scotland a few months ago. And when I was on the way back, I didn't do it. And the lounge at Scotland, Glasgow was completely full. They didn't let me in. They were like, oh, have you got a reservation? I was like, no. It's like, how would you like to get in then? I was like, priority pass. And they were like, no reservation, completely full. So
they didn't know who you were.
They didn't know I was the credit Shifu.
Yeah. It's their fault. It's their fault, Ben, not your fault. I'm gonna blame them for that one. Let's talk a little bit more about points and miles. Aside from travel, and I would say airfare is probably one of the best ways to use the points to get that first class seat, whether it's on Emirates, Qatar, or Air France, et cetera, you name it. Aside from that, do you use your miles and points on any other platforms, like such as Amazon or anything else like this, to pay for things?
Yeah, rarely. I mean, there is one trick you can do, like from time to time, a deal comes around where if you use if you use Amex points to pay for something, you get a discount of like 40%. But the trick is you only actually need to use one Amex point and it activates the discount. So if that deal is active, and you can follow sites like Doctor of Credit and stuff to see when that deal comes back. But yeah, if that's active, I'll use one Amex point to do that, right? Very awesome. Occasionally I'll redeem for cashback. That's just because that's a bad redemption, but very occasional I might. Sometimes because you can, with the Amex Platinum, you can redeem at 1.1 cents per point into Charles Schwab, which is a brokerage. And if there's some stock that's kind of dropped and I'm like, oh, I want to buy that, I might redeem cashback for it and then buy the stock or something. Because then it's going to raise up more anyway. It's generally not a good idea to redeem points at 1.1 cents or 1 cent per point, because you can get like, I think this year I did United Polaris business class from the UK to New York, and I think it was about 6 cents per point. So that's like 6 times the value.
That's incredible.
That's a $4,000 ticket each way. So, and that was 60,000 points. So yeah.
Did you book that on Aeroplan or directly on United?
So I booked it just before United devalued their points. So that ticket now costs 60,000 on United. But yeah, you're right. You can book it through Aeroplan. Sorry, the ticket costs 80,000 on United, but you can book it through Air Canada Aeroplan for 60,000 as long as you can find availability. But I was one of the last people to get it for 60,000 through United.
The points have gone up so much. It's every single, it seems like management program or point award program has raised their prices. I remember now it's harder to find that deal, I would say. I remember a lot of availability was happening. I feel like the airlines at this time are trying to recoup their losses from 3 years ago. So they're raising their prices. I own a company called flightslux.com where we specialize in booking clients. Now, we don't use points and miles that are not the client's points and miles to book, or we don't barter miles. A lot of companies do that. And I think it's against the point systems that these airlines set out. But even with published fares nowadays, I mean, you got tickets that are $10,000 to the UK per seat in business class. And in the past, that ticket was like 4,000 or 3,000, and if you used your points and miles and you got a saver deal, you'd be at $1,000 to $1,500 in points value or so. And it's incredible how the industry has changed, and the devaluation of your points with these airlines has really continued to take into many airlines, not just United, not just Delta. So hopefully we see a shift in that, because I went on Aeroplan the other day and I tried to look up some flights for myself, and 450,000 round trip, really crazy.
It's not
really
Saver, right?
rate. Yeah, it's not Savers, but and even the Saver ones were just not where I remember them being when I used to search, because I haven't flown in a couple of years. All right, let's talk about credit cards. One more question. If you could go anywhere right now with your points and miles, and how many do you have right now saved up? Let's say in Amex.
Oh, in Amex. In Amex, I'm pretty low because I just exchanged several 100,000 for flights to Hawaii. So in Amex, I'm like 30 or 40,000, something like that.
Okay. What about Chase?
Chase, I'm also like maybe 40,000. British Airways, I have 100,000. Wyndham, I have 75,000. I'm sure I'm missing a few. Probably a few hotel ones. I got a few 100,000 as well.
So is it a bad thing that I'm keeping 2 million miles here? And is it a bad?
Don't sit on them for a long time, because like you're saying, they do devalue, right? So it's probably better to use them within like 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
I also have another 100,000 Amex points in my Rakuten account. So Rakuten is a great way to earn extra points, like a shopping portal. So yeah, many of your favorite websites that you can, shopping websites, you click through Rakuten first and you earn extra Amex points through there. So I got 100,000 that I'll get in November from that as well. But yeah, I try not to sit on them for too long. And also the whole point of having them is to
enjoy them.
To enjoy them, right?
Yeah, I agree. I'm lagging on that, Ben. Let me ask you, where would you travel to? Let's say you could go anywhere next. I know you just got back from Hawaii with your family. You loved it there. You told me before we started recording. And what's the next trip? Where do you see yourself ending up?
Well, my next trip, I want to go back to the Caribbean, because going to Hawaii is just too long, like 12 hours or something.
Oh, wow.
So I went to Grand Cayman before and loved that. So I think I might go to maybe the Turks and Caicos Islands, or some other islands in the Caribbean. I want to explore the Caribbean a bit more. I tried snorkeling in Hawaii for the first time. I thought that was really fun. So I'd like to go and do that. Oh, that was all. I saw so many fish. It was amazing. I got a lot of footage on my channel of like with the GoPro underwater of filming fish and stuff. And yeah, so I'd like to go and do that in the Caribbean where it's closer. I could take a 3-hour flight instead of a 12-hour flight.
Ben, have you ever tried scuba diving?
Only in a pool.
In a pool. Oh, yeah,
okay. But yeah, I'd like to try that too. I'd definitely try that too. Yeah.
Okay. Be careful. I almost died doing it in the Caribbean, to the point where, oh yeah, I couldn't clear. Some people can't clear, and it happens on airplanes as well. And I had a hard time clearing, but it was kind of an interesting experience. I'll tell you about that one in the future, but to the point where we got off the boat and they took me to a decompression chamber. They were freaking out that I had decompression poison. And that was in the Caribbean, but I would do it again. So we'll talk about that one another time.
It was like shallow diving, because if you go too deep, then you've got all these issues with different like decompression, and you have to use different gases and all these
anything over 10 feet, you gotta really be, you gotta know what you're doing. Let me ask you, for someone, I've done a few podcasts already on credit. Like I had a kid come on, he's 18 years old. He made credit his biggest thing in America, or his journey to getting the nice cars, the house, the loan, the apartment, etc. And I was pretty impressed. And you came here to America, didn't know what credit was. How important is credit for the audience to understand thoroughly? Like they don't teach this stuff in school at all, which is crazy, right? Like it's the biggest judgment on a person aside maybe from some type of record. It literally is a judgment that carries with you your whole life. How important is credit, and what should people understand about it?
Well, they should understand it's basically a score of how trustworthy you are. I think that's kind of a good way to sum it up, right? Because it's whether you pay your debts or not. And yeah, like you said, there's credit, and then there's maybe criminal judgments or liens, like if you didn't pay your taxes, but there's only a few things that are like on your credit, on your record like that, right? And credit, I would say, is the main one that everyone has. And so, yeah, if you build up your credit score, you can do so many things. Banks will trust you. I just took out a home equity line of credit on my house, right? Because we bought it before the pandemic. It's increased in price by 50%. Oh, wow. which is crazy, right? Yeah. And so then I can borrow against it, and it's tax free, right? So it's not like if I had to earn that money, I'd pay like quite a 20-30% tax or something at least, right? I can just get it tax free, and obviously it's borrowed. I'm paying interest, but if you're going to use it for another business, and I don't encourage people to take out a credit to fund their desires. Like don't go into debt to fund your desires, but if you get credit cards, you just pay them back every month, right? And enjoy the points and stuff. But if you do want to actually use credit and actually borrow money and you're willing to pay interest, it's best to do it if it's either to fund like education or fund a business. So,
or another property. I'll add to that.
Yep. Well, that's what I'm doing. It's an investment property business. So I'm building this cabin right now, which is like a few weeks away from completion.
Oh, congrats.
I think I've been saying that for months.
Yeah, I think, what's funny about that, guys? The last time I talked to Ben, which was about a year and a half ago, he told me he's building a cabin, and he told me that it's getting completed. And trust me, I know construction as well. So it's never in the timeline that you think it will be. Is that right?
Well, that's because this is my first thing I've ever built. So at that time, I really didn't know anything. I was like, the builder was like, oh yeah, we'll be done in 4 months. And I was like, I didn't know not to believe him, right? But anyway, now the floor is in, the kitchen cabinets are in, the bathroom tiles are in. So we really are pretty close. Hot tub's being delivered in a couple of weeks. So we should be done by the end of the month, but which means probably the end of the year. But yeah. Anyway, so I had sort of like the bank that funds the construction with this, because I got a construction loan for it. They sort of they release the funds at a different rate to when the builder wants the funds. Their schedule isn't aligned. So I took out this home equity line of credit on my house so I can sort of fill the gaps, and I solve the issue with liquidity. But just having a good credit score. I was able to convince 2 banks to lend me like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
By leveraging your property, which is basically
the second one. The second one is by leveraging my property, and I've got that HELOC for 10 years, right? It's interest only for 10 years, and then you got to start paying it back. So I can draw on it, I can pay it back, draw on it, pay it back, just like a credit card throughout that whole 10 years, which is great, because if you see a good deal, like a good piece of land or something, you can just use that money, do the deal, and then pay it back, but that's the thing, you have to pay it back, right? So you need to create a cash flowing business, a cash flowing rental property or Airbnb. You pay back the money you borrowed, and then you have something next year. Do it again. Yeah.
What basically Ben is saying is, don't pull out a line of credit on your home, buy yourself a Lamborghini that's going to potentially depreciate, and then be forced to sell your home because you're not able to pay it back later just to cover your, payments. It's definitely, I think, leveraging your line of credits or even the home equity or commercial equity to buy another property is such a great thing. And I just recently had someone on my podcast to talk about the different ways of getting these loans. And there are so many interesting ways that I think the conventional viewer does not know about. There's so many different programs than the standard 30-year mortgage, because a lot of people were thinking that. I personally enjoyed listening to this individual explain all these other methods. And this was one method where she said leveraging a property would be really good. Let's get into your social media, because I'm so intrigued. I think we've talked enough about points, and I know people will go to your channel and talk about points and the beauty of that. But social media, you mentioned you were one of the first to go on YouTube. Did you have like an ice break moment where you had to say, hey, I'm going to be in front of the camera? Or was this kind of natural for you given your background?
Yeah, it was natural for me because I'd already done a lot of TV stuff before. Actually on YouTube as well. I was the number 3 online celebrity in Taiwan in the year 2014. Yeah,
You're
it's
kidding.
random, isn't it?
Oh
Yeah,
my
no, I'm
God.
serious. So like, I had a show. It's in Chinese. I presented the camera, and yeah, it was very, very popular from like 2013 until about 20. I'd say all the way up until I stopped it in 2020.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was, and if I see people from Taiwan or if I go there now, people still recognize me and want a photo and stuff. But yeah, so I was already pretty good, pretty used to being on camera. And so, yeah, I just sort of started this channel on the side, like, oh, maybe this could go somewhere. And then I had a viral video about how to get approved for the Chase Sapphire Reserve, because that was a credit card that came out at that time. And it was like, there's a lot of buzz around it. The points guy made like $1 million off of launching that card,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
Yeah.
Really?
It was like $1 million launch for him off the referrals and stuff, apparently, according to news sources and stuff. So yeah, so we kind of got in on the action with that. It was very viral. Like Chase didn't do any marketing for that. They just let influencers push it.
Incredible how that is. They didn't even have to pay for it. Well, maybe they pay on the back end if there's a referral.
Well, they paid with the huge bonus. Yeah. And the
Yeah,
referral fee. Right.
yeah.
Exactly. So the referral fee and the huge bonus they paid for. And then from that, we got into Bankrate, which is now called Red Ventures, which is a affiliate network where you can sell credit cards and get paid for them and stuff. But yeah, there wasn't really, it was kind of natural for me to go into it just because I had some experience in TV stuff already.
That's cool. That's and you've done great. We mentioned you have now 200,000 subscribers. Congratulations.
Yeah, just past that. Yeah.
Just past it. Did you get another plaque? Are they sending you a plaque, or what are they doing over there?
They only give it for 100,000, and then the next one is 1 million. So
Oh man, so you got a hill to climb.
oh, I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon. We're not growing that fast anymore. I think because there's so many new channels about credit that yeah.
That's a great question for me to ask you. Is it too late to start in YouTube? I mean, you were a pioneer. So is it for someone that's watching going, hey, I'm going to start a YouTube side hustle with so much competition nowadays? Is this a good avenue to approach? Or do you think it's based on like personality? Or I notice women get more attention than men in some cases, depending on how they look and so forth. But is it a good career to start a YouTube channel today?
It can be. Yeah, it really depends on the niche and it depends on your abilities. If you're lucky enough that you just have a very appealing personality or looks that people really want to watch. I mean, some people have just won the lottery like that, especially people on TikTok where they make like these really short videos of them just sort of, I don't know, not doing not much. And they really get a lot of views. So there's a few different types, I guess you could say, of YouTuber. Like one person is the one who sort of won the lottery, in that they just right place at the right time. Then you've got people who really do have original ideas, and then you've got people who meticulously study YouTube and do a data-driven approach, who can do pretty well with channels too. So it's definitely not too late, but it's definitely harder than it was back like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. The competition, the analytics part, understanding the keywords, it's become more of like a business. And the ones that are, as you said, meticulously study it and really put a lot more effort into it with consistency, I think that's a big one in YouTube. See a better prize. And it definitely helps being prettier, which means you and I are out of luck, Ben. We could have already had more following. But all right, what are some of the biggest challenges of having a YouTube and some of the biggest rewards of having a YouTube channel?
Well, biggest challenge could be that you are like, sometimes you feel a little bit like you're on a treadmill, that you have to keep producing content because you have to be consistent. I would say some of the biggest rewards are like when maybe a client gets you to do a video and they give you a nice budget, and then you can spend some of that budget on amazing stuff, you know? Um,
And when you say a client, you mean like, say, an advertiser comes to you or a marketing company?
yeah, because you don't just make money through YouTube ads, right? You also, like, I make probably 75% of the money I'm making, or even more, maybe 80% from companies that want to advertise on the channel. Um, you know, so for example, a company, they wanted us to do a video about their car like a year ago, and we rented a Slingshot, which is this like convertible three-wheeler. It's kind of like a poor man's Lamborghini or something, but it's a lot
That's
of
awesome.
fun. You know,
I've
it's
drove
like,
that before.
you've driven one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like if you
yeah.
go to Las Vegas, you'll see them all over the place because they
Yeah.
rent them out there. But yeah, we rented one of those and we drove around the mountains near where I live. And then we rented like a riverside cabin and stuff. And like, it's all paid for by the client because we were using it as a backdrop for the shooting, you know, but it's a lot of fun. Same with when someone invites me to like speak at a conference or something. Last time I said to this conference in Scotland, I was like, hey, I don't really need much of a fee. Just get me a good flight.
Oh,
So
nice.
so he got me a flight out there on a JetBlue. I had a chance to review the new JetBlue Mint Studio, which is this really big. There's only two of them on the plane, and it's this business class seat that's right at the front because there's no seat in front of you. You get extra space, and they give you this extra little sofa beside you and stuff. Really cool. So
How nice was that?
yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was great. And I got a video of that on my channel if people want to see it. But yeah, those are really good. I would say that's the best times where you get to sort of meet people and go and do random things. Like, oh, like at that event as well, actually, I was, so I got there and then we, we went to the hotel and I met the guy who ran that through just Instagram. He's this entrepreneur from the UK. He's in his like mid-20s. But he knows a lot of like the biggest property people in the UK, right? So,
Oh, wow.
so I flew there from New York, got to Scotland. I've only been to Scotland like once before. And then just in like a whirlwind, I'm suddenly at this dinner with this other YouTuber, or a load of other YouTubers, including Andrew Tate's cameraman. He
Oh, wow.
like the guy who shoots all of Andrew Tate's videos. He
Oh, boy.
was there. He was a super nice guy, and his girlfriend was there as well. And then there was this other YouTuber who was like this guy who reviews watches. Called, you might know this guy actually, called Nico Leonard. You know him?
I don't. I the only there's a couple watch YouTubers out there. There's Eric, the watch guy. There's Roman Sharf. There's one that I just did a video on called the Timepiece Gentleman. Apparently, he took a lot of people's watches and disappeared. And what happened with that guy? Did he sell you a watch?
No. So you should definitely check him out, Nico Leonard. You've probably come across his stuff before. You just might not know the name, but he's like the crazy watch guy from Ireland, and he was wearing like a 300,000 pound what was it, Richard Mille, and then we end up going to this casino at like midnight, and playing until like 1 or something because the hotel had a fire alarm, so it's
Boy.
there's a casino just down the road. So like I love those sort of random encounters with people. Like, I'll probably never see that guy again, but it's just,
It was fun.
you go to some of these events where you meet people and they're like YouTubers or like celebrities or big business people or whatever, and just like the experiences you can have through being a YouTuber and the people you meet, like that's really valuable.
I completely agree. I've met quite a few cool people including you, off YouTube, just by doing it. It's almost like a networking kind of group that understands the amount of effort this all takes, the long-term thinking. And I do find that a lot of people that I met from YouTube are generally very nice, humble people that are very excited to also meet other individuals that are like-minded. A YouTube group is kind of, to me, and being in business that I am for so many years, it's kind of like a YPO group or one of these like business CEO groups where you're just collaborating or even just understanding what each of you brings to the table. And I think YPO, there's an EPO, there's a couple others that are out there that are very similar. But I've had some fun memories with some people from YouTube. I haven't met as many as you have, of course, probably because my channel's smaller, but it's been great. Let me ask you another question. When do you start seeing, and let's say you're just starting out on YouTube, or maybe you're someone like myself, I don't have the biggest following, but when do you start seeing advertisers come in or start considering you as a potential to advertise? At what subscription level, or how
I
many
would say
subscribers?
you'd need probably to be around at least 50,000. Um,
50,000.
and you also, but it's not just about the level of subscribers, it's also about how many views that you can get. Because there are
Mhm.
some channels that have like maybe 200,000 subscribers, but it all came from one video that's kind of a little bit different to their main content, and thus they're not very engaged, you know? So maybe they get like 2,000 views a video, even though it got 100,000 subscribers. So
I see.
advertisers will look, yeah, they'll look both at your advertising, at your subscriber count, and at the average views per video. So we get, you know, around maybe 15,000 views per video on average.
Mhm.
So they'll give us a price, you know, they'll offer us a price based on that. That level of views actually in a non-finance niche wouldn't get you very good, you know, income. But
I
because
see.
we're financial, you know, products, we can charge about 3 times as much as other niches, you know.
Yeah, because they have the money. They know how much they're going to get on the residual end of it. Um, what when when you do a video or when you do content, and you and I briefly talked about this last time, you tend to stick to credit cards mainly. And you mentioned that it's hard to kind of branch out. That could be with concern for maybe your advertisers. It could also mean that the target audience is not correct. So, how do you manage that? How do you not only provide, say, credit card content, but also understand that maybe you want to talk about something else? Or have you done that, or have you mastered that?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about something else that's kind of related but not really, it's best to do it on a second channel. And then
Mhm.
you can sort of drive some people over. Like the ones that are interested will come over the second channel, and you start building on another channel. Um, like we cover credit cards, but we've also tried to cover general like finance stuff on the channel, but it's quite hard. And I'm also not really an expert in it. Like if I try to talk about stocks, you know, I'm far from
Mhm.
being an expert in stocks. So personal finance stuff has done quite well sometimes on our channel,
Mhm.
and certain travel content does well. Although YouTube, it's weird, you know, some things that you thought would do well don't for some
Yeah,
reason, you know, and it's really frustrating.
it is. I will agree to that. I've done some videos where I'm like, this is going to be great. People will enjoy it or whatever. Look at this, like the work I've put into it. It's taken a long course. I've documented it all. And then all of a sudden I release that video, and in my case, it gets, less than 1,000 views. And then I'll release some other video that's kind of, not even the trendiest topic, and all of a sudden it'll get more views, and I'm like, why am I spending so much time prepping this long journey of this one video? And it's kind of amazing that YouTube will put you out there for certain stuff, but I think that the end, what I learned from that experience is you just got to keep going. Not you, maybe there's no right formula, you just keep putting out content.
Yeah, you got to keep putting it out. Like sometimes the videos you put most effort in, they don't do well. Like the ones on shooting credit cards that we did, we went and found this like 80 acres of private land, and we got all these different guns, and we like shot the metal credit cards to see if they're bulletproof. And it did like 6 or 7,000 views. But then we do like something else, like some boring news about American Express, like
Yeah.
changing their sign up bonus rules, and it gets like 25,000 views. So it's
That's crazy. You know what, Ben? I want to do a shooting video now. You've kind of inspired me. But if you're telling me it's only going to get 6,000 views and I got to load up the guns and do all this stuff, maybe it's not worth it. And then maybe, yeah, it's double the effort. There's bullets involved. It's dangerous. I don't know if Amex will like me blowing up their credit card. So I
they
don't know.
probably won't like you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Although
so
they haven't.
so how, okay, so that kind of goes back to like, well, how do you make a viral video to attract a big audience? What do you see that works for you to attract audiences to grow your channel?
Well, a viral video is definitely, you've got to look at topics that are viral. Like I started getting big when it was the Chase Sapphire Reserve
Mhm.
had just come out. That was quite viral. Right now, the Venture X, the Capital One Venture X, is one that's pretty hot. So I've noticed when I do videos that are about that card, they do pretty well. right? I had a video yesterday that was about this new 90,000 point bonus on that card, and it was like one of the best videos in the past few weeks.
Wow.
Did pretty well. American Express is always a hot topic because it's just such an iconic company. But there's definitely other things that, things in the news. I mean, when we had the whole stimulus thing back during the pandemic, like we were getting massive views on that stuff. And that was just such low effort content. I got like 500,000 views on a video that was just like telling people the regulations about the new stimulus act, right?
Crazy.
And so, but YouTube can be kind of cruel as well because it can take away your views too. Like during the whole stimulus thing, we were getting hundreds of thousands of views, and then one day it just stopped.
Yeah, they just shut it off as if they didn't want people to talk about the stimuluses anymore.
It was weird, yeah. But there were some channels that kept going for a long time. It was almost like there's a pool of channels and they're all talking about the same thing. And YouTube, first of all, gives all of them impressions. So people click and they get views. And then it starts like picking off one by one, the ones that maybe aren't quite as good on the data, like not quite as long audience viewer retention and stuff. They start getting picked off. And a friend of mine, Pointers, is Rami, he Points Pointers in New York. He did stimulus stuff for ages. He got up to like 200,000 subs. He was at like 20,000. He got all the way up to 200,000 subs doing stimulus videos. And then one day it just turned off like a light, just like.
So what happened? What happened to his?
He doesn't upload anymore because he used to be all about credit cards and points and stuff. And he kind of ruined his audience by adding all these stimulus people. And all those people just switched off when stimulus ended.
That's crazy. And he just dropped YouTube?
See, I don't think he'd quit his job or anything. So he hasn't uploaded for ages. I haven't seen anything new from him for a long time. So
let me ask you, have you seen a lot of people come and go on YouTube? Like they try it out, they get a certain amount of following and they just can't keep the hamster wheel, so to speak, going, because this is a hamster wheel. As much as we'd like to sugarcoat it and say it's we meet a lot of people, it's constant. You have to keep going, in my opinion, to just keep uploading, because you're only as good as your last video in some sense, correct?
Yeah, and you've got to kind of keep reinventing yourself as well. And it's important to try and gradually change your content to get to new audiences. So I probably will be starting to try and do that a bit more, adding in more of the travel content, more personal finance content rather than just credit card stuff. But it is hard because if you have a video that flops, you'd be like, wow, we didn't make much revenue that day, Like if you normally make like several hundred, like say 300 or something from your videos, and then you make more from ads and stuff as well, but just from AdSense. And then one day you have a video that really flops, and then it might be 2 days to your next upload. So the following day it dips like to like $98 or something.
Yeah. And you're like, what the heck? And not only that, your time is money. There's only so many videos you could put out and then get the editor and so forth. So when a flop comes out and people that may not do YouTube, it's discouraging. You know what I mean? It's
it is. Yeah, because you're on that cycle, you're like a 2-day cycle or something. And it can, I've had channels. So I used to do a load of other like science fiction channels and stuff, and we've had these wild swings, I think our best month ever on a channel was 58,000, right? $58,000. And that same channel during the summer months where the CPMs are the lowest and views are lower because kids are on summer holidays and stuff was down to like 9,000, You get that wild of a swing. That's crazy, wild. Isn't it? And there were 2 of us working on that channel as well. So like you could see 9,000, it's a bit tight.
Yeah. You had to eat cereal. You had to eat cereal for lunch and dinner as well. That time.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Let me ask you, do people recognize you in public sometimes or at lounges because you got pretty good following?
Definitely at lounges and definitely in Las Vegas as well. They recognize me a lot. Sometimes I have to say though, people say, are you on YouTube? And I'm like, yeah, but which channel?
Yeah. It's
like 3 or 4 channels. I could either be the Star Wars, Star Trek guy, the credit card guy, the Chinese speaking Westerner guy. There's like at least 3 different. But generally if it's in an airport lounge or at like a luxury hotel or something, it's going to be, from the credit card channel. Well, one time I met a guy.
I have a funny thing to tell you about that. Having multiple businesses, sometimes when I answer the phone, because I don't know which company's referring that call, I'm like, this is Simon. they're like, is this company or that company? And I'm like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Because I don't know. I can't answer the call saying this is Simon with flightslex.com because I have no idea as our main system routes all the calls in. So it's kind of funny. And you get this very similar scenario when people are like, hey, you're on YouTube. And you're like, do you want me to speak, Mandarin right now? Or
Yeah.
are you about points and cards? That's funny. All right. So it seems to me that the best way to engage an audience is to continue to give them what they want. Sometimes it doesn't happen. You think you're giving them what they want, but YouTube may not consider that as what they want. So you're kind of at this conflict. Any other tips for anyone starting a YouTube channel or having a YouTube channel with engaging content before we just jump off YouTube onto something more fun?
Yeah. Well, I would say when you're creating videos, you've got to keep it concise. Like, don't do any long intros where you're like, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And because if someone new is watching your video, they're just going to click off. They don't want to see. They want you to get to the point, right? They see the title and the thumbnail. That's why they've clicked, because they're interested in that topic. So you just get right to the point and try to keep it changing. Like, basically there's like a 3-second rule. Have something change every 3 seconds, whether it's the camera dipping in or out. This might be different for podcasts that are like conversations. People have more patience with that. But for the sort of main content that people do, where they're like talking to the camera, talking about certain topics or vlogs or whatever, try to have a change every 3 seconds. Could be just cutting in and out, could be B-roll, could be something. But yeah, you've got to keep it tight. You got to keep it moving. You can even cut out your breaths, like if someone takes breaths in between words, some people even cut those out. Yeah. Constantly shocking people's brain to kind of reset their attention span.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The attention span of people, it sounds like, has drastically changed with the mobile phones and the internet and everything. They just want things so quick.
Yeah, I think definitely when they're browsing their cell phone, their attention span is short. But like the attention span can be longer if they've committed to watching something. Like with a podcast, if they know it's a good podcast and there's a good guest on that they really want to know about, people will commit to watching like an hour long. Or if they're watching like a Netflix documentary or a movie, they'll definitely commit to it. So it's not their total attention span, but I think it's, definitely when they're just browsing their cell phone, their attention span can be pretty low.
Let's talk about that a little bit. How important has, say, Instagram been, Instagram Reels? Are you getting more into that space in social media to kind of capture TikTok, for example, to capture a wider audience to funnel back to maybe your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I try. Actually, basically, I upload Reels, the same thing, to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. I think YouTube Shorts actually plays a better role at getting people to discover the channel, because they might discover you through Shorts and then they start watching your long form content. TikTok is pretty good. Like, I've got 60,000 followers on TikTok, but my TikTok hasn't really grown that much recently. And it's also, I've discovered it's kind of hard to push people back to YouTube from TikTok.
Really?
The funnel doesn't work that well. Because often if you like mention YouTube in a TikTok video, TikTok like cuts your reach. If you like follow on my YouTube, you won't get as many views. Yeah.
Wow.
TikTok's just such an up and down platform. I've had views with like 6 million. I've had videos with like several million views, and then sometimes I'll upload one and it'll get like 700.
Wow, that's so interesting. I could never understand these algorithms. I personally can't master them. I mean, Ben, when I started a YouTube channel, we talked about it. We were like, what do you do it for? And I truly, it kind of went into this podcasting, which I enjoy doing more because I love hearing people like you talk about your experiences and how you've been able to master that system and from all aspects. So I definitely think, constantly developing your brand or constantly moving or pivoting is essential in any space, and understanding, branching out to all these other platforms. I do notice that YouTube Shorts does give a lot more attention to a channel than, say, Instagram or any of those other platforms, particularly to YouTube. And I think it's because they're really pushing it. I've had, we just launched the Ideal Hour podcast, and the shorts are getting thousands of views. We've had 10,000 views on a small clip talking about Amex Centurion card. And we'll launch the podcast, and the podcast, because it's a new channel, gets 100 views or something like this, which is really interesting. So shorts, guys, are a great idea. Thank you, Ben, for talking about that. Let's talk a little bit about your personal life. We've talked about travel. We've talked about credit cards. We've talked about how you started. Personal life. I know you have, I believe, 2 children. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got 2 daughters. One's 5, one's 7.
Yeah. How do you manage the work-life balance, having multiple channels, traveling, getting noticed at airports, giving them time and attention, etc.? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it can be tough. I mean, the toughest time for me is the summer when they're off school and I've got to like manage them. I mean, well, this summer I sent them to a summer camp.
Okay.
But it was very expensive, like thousands of dollars. So I was kind of annoyed. I was like, oh, yes, we got a few months where we don't have to pay school fee, right? Because they're at a private school, right? So this summer I was like, oh, yes, no school fees for like 2 months. And then my wife's like, oh, by the way, they're going to this dance camp and it's like, it's like $4,000 per kid or something. I'm like, oh. So yeah, that was, but yeah, having the, like, if they're at home and I'm at home, it's really tough to work and have kids there. So I always try to get them stuff to do. And now I've actually moved into another office with a few other creators.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's what this new studio is. This is actually a TV. This is not green screen.
I thought it was one of the screens I'm using for this one. That's funny. That's cool that you guys got a full TV behind you.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the difficult thing. I mean, when they're at school, it's all good. But I did become an entrepreneur because I wanted to spend more time with my family. That was one of the biggest reasons. So I still have like a way better situation than someone who works a 9-to-5 job with a commute. Because you'd basically be like gone like 8 to 6 or something, or 7:30 to 7:30, 6:30 in the evening or something like that. So I can get out of here at like 4 or 4:30 and be there when they come home from school and stuff. So
I agree with that, Ben. I think and guys that are listening, part of the most rewarding experience about being an entrepreneur is you kind of set your own schedule. You don't have to miss those soccer games, those dances and so forth. You set your own schedule. You get to do what you want. It's helped me with my family. Yes, you may be losing dollars on the back end by not being at work that day, but you're setting your own schedule and you're enjoying that family time, which is very rewarding. Now, Ben, another thing maybe some of your audience does not know about you, but I've seen an Instagram post one time with you. You did martial arts in the past and you still do? Is this correct?
I sort of dabble. Okay. I've had a few injuries that have made it a little hard for me to be like, I couldn't really do it at a competition level anymore because certain things just, But I did a lot of, so I started with doing like Shaolin Kung Fu back in, I started that when I was 16 and did it for like 2 years until I was 19. And I dabbled in a load of other like Chinese martial arts. And then when I moved to New York, I trained with a master, Long Fei Yang, who does praying mantis style, but it's sort of a rare praying mantis, more like an internal soft mantis style. And he also taught us some long fist forms as well. And then I also commentated on a martial arts competition for the TV station I worked at. Yeah, it's a traditional arts competition. So it wasn't fighting, but it was like forms and a lot of weapons forms and stuff like that. More the art side of it than the actual fighting. But yeah, potentially in the future, I would like to do some training again.
Do you miss it? Do you find it that it resets your body and mind? I mean, for example, I do jujitsu and I've been doing it before I did Krav Maga, which is like Israeli defense, and what's happening in Israel right now is very sad. But I did Krav Maga, which was very aggressive fighting. It's more of like a street survival tactic where anything goes. It's probably the best thing for self-defense you could learn on the street. Next to Muay Thai, in my opinion, which is a really good distance fighting as well. But I find that in jiu-jitsu, when someone's trying to choke me out or do all these things, I shut off. So I forget about all the videos, the bills, anything else that's going on. Do you miss that part of martial arts, or would you say it was resetting you or giving you a balance?
I know what you mean. That feeling of being in the zone, actually, that you're talking about. So I used to do a lot of rock climbing. I was actually an instructor of that for 2 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
I did a lot of like traditional rock climbing where you place your own gear as you go up, and you get into some really dangerous situations where you've got a rope that's hanging on by a tiny little thing and probably would fall out if you fell off. And and I know that feeling, right? When like someone's trying to choke you and you're just like, that you have to get yourself out of the situation, right? Like I can remember being like on a tiny ledge and then my rope is below me and I know what it's connected to is not very strong at all. And that you can't climb down. No one's going to save you. The only person who can get you out of it is yourself, right? And you have to just make the move.
And you have to focus on that immediate threat, which completely shuts off anything else in your mind that was a worry right before that time frame. That's pretty cool. All right. So where does Ben see himself in the next 5 years? Like, what is your life goal? Do you want to retire? Do you want to build a media brand? Do you want to compete with the points guy? Where do you see yourself?
So yeah, no, this is interesting because what I actually want to do, well, that's the reason I'm building this house. It's my first test of getting into the hospitality industry. Because I eventually, I've made my career like reviewing luxury hotels and things like that. I actually want to do my own luxury hotels.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm so, I've always been so into it. I think, I'm into airlines too, but doing an airline is way harder. You have to be some huge company to set up an airline. But to open hotels, like boutique hotels at first, and then, from there, build sort of a brand. It's super interesting. I've been reading a lot of books about it, about the Ritz-Carlton. I've watched some stuff with like Steve Wynn and the guy who designed all his hotels and casinos.
Hotels.
I forget his name. Roger Thomas, I think his name is. But anyway, so yeah, my aim is I'm going to create this. I'm going to do this Airbnb. It's a luxury mountain cabin with hot tub and wood stove and all this stuff. We're going to run it with luxury products and make it really good. And then after like 6 months, we're going to create a prospectus for investors, and we're going to try and raise several million, and we're going to do the next stage, which would be like a village of cabins, right?
Where is this cabin at?
This is in the Catskills Mountains, north of New York City. So this is targeting sort of, Manhattan crowd, like, Wall Street people and stuff. Yeah. Try, who want to go away for the weekend, and, they want like the hot tub, the wood stove, the cabin mountain feel. They want to be close to a state park and stuff. So
they want to reset. They want to get away and kind of refresh. And you're giving them the amenities of a clean place and the luxury that they expect. Very interesting idea. I have something to add to that. We go to Lake Tahoe a lot. Where we're at, it's a 3-hour drive. There's North Tahoe, South Tahoe. And we go quite a few times a year. It's always been a goal to get a cabin up there as well, or a lakefront. Lakefronts there are now like in the 20 millions, so I don't know if that'll ever happen. But overall, I found out that the Ritz-Carlton in Lake Tahoe, they actually don't own the properties themselves.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. And I always thought that, well, Ritz-Carlton's this big brand that would own the property that they're managing, but it turns out that a family owns it and leases to Ritz-Carlton as a property management company. So in your case, are you going to own the properties in the future? Or are you going to build them and lease them for management?
My case is I probably want to own the whole thing and do everything to my specifications.
Okay.
But that could, because you can create a brand and then you can have other people, kind of like a franchise. You can have other people run different branches of the brand. Like I have a friend who runs a Hilton hotel, and he bought the hotel as a Hilton, right? Wow. So
and just kept the brand.
Yeah, I mean, he's signed to Hilton, so he has to keep the brand.
Yeah.
And Hilton tells there's certain things that he has to do, like he has to run in a certain way. Obviously, the products have to be the ones that Hilton wants, and that certain things. So you can do it in lots of different ways. Actually, a lot of the casino hotels in Las Vegas, like MGM, doesn't necessarily own the physical building, that kind of stuff. So it obviously on a small scale, I think when you first start it, you just own the whole thing, or you perhaps own it with investors, right? But if you create an amazing brand, then it's totally on the table that you could advertise that to other people who have properties or land, and you can say to them, hey, you could set up, a branch of our hotel here. Yeah.
And I think with your following, it's great to be able to use that for the advertising purposes of that cabin in the beginning and move it forward. I think that's incredible. That's awesome. You're looking for investors at that point. It's going to be something that's really interesting. I look forward to seeing that project. Ben, I think that's about it. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we conclude? I think we did such a great job to give the audience a little bit more about you, at the same time about what you are known for and kind of where you want to go in the future. I think that's seems like hospitality is in your future, and that's something you enjoy. So
yeah, that's what I want to do. So we'll still be doing stuff on YouTube, but as we have more interesting stuff outside of YouTube, like properties and stuff, hopefully we can make videos about that and expand the channel to more things, so not just credit cards. But obviously with building properties, you can build up a lot of points as well. Because if you buy, I just bought like flooring that costs $10,000, for example, and it got like, 15,000 points or whatever. So and I didn't do it that much with this house, but the builder brought a lot of the stuff, but I sort of thought about it later on, like, oh yeah, I could actually buy almost everything.
Yeah, my advice is always buy your own stuff. I'm not this big real estate guru, but I don't know if you've seen on my channel, I took a warehouse, built this big thing. You could check it out on Instagram. Actually, I posted it up, but which is our studio. But I notice it's always better, from my experience, to buy your own materials. One, they tend to mark it up, usually 10% or so. And two, what I've caught people doing is, and this goes for any home remodelers out there as well, these people will overbuy all the time, like supplies, tools, etc., even for a small remodel. And then because they
save some for the next project or something.
Yeah, they use it for the next project, which is not fair. And then on top of that, they'll also return it. So they'll pay for it. They're expecting you to reimburse them. Let's say they'll rake it up $1,500 when in reality you're $700 in real materials. And then they'll return it to Home Depot that day or the next day. Some people that are kind of like this luxury remodelers or a ma and pa or someone that's busy, a CEO of a tech company here in the Bay Area, let's say, they're not really watching those receipts. But the builders, and this is not every contractor, but the builders or the contractors tend to go and make a back end on that. And I've caught them doing that quite a few times, to the point where I said, you know what, I'm just buying my own stuff. If I need to return it, I'll return it. I'll get money back on my credit card. I'll get the points, like you said, et cetera. But that's all exciting. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It truly is my honor and my pleasure. I know you're a busy guy. I hope you enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, man. Can't wait to see it as well. Can't wait to watch it.
You could, we'll give you a link to everything for you to do your thing with your team. It's going to be launched probably in a couple of weeks, guys. So stay tuned. And truly thankful. Anytime you need anything, Ben, you have a friend on this side of the country. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to come out with this cabin. And maybe one day I get to experience it.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, if you come over, we'll definitely let you stay there. And guys, you can check out our channel. You can search Ben Hedges or The Credit Shifu on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search me there and you'll find our stuff.
And we're going to link you below on all your platforms as well, of course. And, you could use the material. It's been my pleasure. This also gets launched on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and as well as YouTube. So, anything you need, you let me know, Ben. I truly appreciate it. I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're expanding. It seems like you're doing a lot. So that's pretty cool from last time we talked. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Simon.